Hold it, the snapper called, but many in here can't stop smiling. It was an election full of surprise twists, but this image conveys the central plot line. 411 Labour MPs elected to Parliament, 63% of the entire House of Commons.
Congratulations, Chancellor.
Oh, thank you very much.
Rachel Reeves delivered the first big policy speech of the new government, promising urgent action to get growth back into the economy. Rushing for his seat at the speech, Ed Miliband's department will, with immediate effect, lift the ban on onshore wind farms in England, 9 years after David Cameron brought it in. Rachel Reeves said the government would loosen planning restrictions to make sure it met its pledges to build homes and infrastructure.
Hello, and welcome to the Treasury.
And it wouldn't cave in to opposition.
I know that there will be opposition to this. I'm not naive to that. And we must acknowledge that trade-offs always exist. Any development may have environmental consequences, place pressure on services, and rouse voices of local opposition. But we will not succumb to a status quo which responds to the existence of trade-offs by always saying no.
The Chancellor said she would soon make a statement to Parliament about the atrocious state of the national finances, which she said had become even clearer to her in her short time in office.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that. Our economy has been held back by decisions deferred and decisions ducked. Political self-interest put ahead of the national interest.
She knows when George Osborne ran the Treasury, he relentlessly blamed the last Labour government for his economic inheritance. She's hoping she can repeat the trick.
This is the legacy of 13 years of fiscal irresponsibility. We urgently need a full independent assessment of how bad the problem really is.
Back then, he wanted to blame Labour predecessors for austerity measures. The new Chancellor hasn't yet defined what tax rises or spending cuts she wants blamed on the Tories. Earlier, Keir Starmer completed his tour of the United Kingdom. In Northern Ireland, he was heard confirming he'd keep Parliament working a few extra days to the end of July.
So we'll extend it through to probably, I don't know what I've told you that. I think I'm aware. But we'll then extend it to at least the end of July and then back to the beginning of September.
In Wales, he surprised a children's choir rehearsing for an upcoming royal visit.
Hello, if you sing like that, he's going to absolutely love
it. Like Cymru supporters welcomed 4 MPs to the new Parliament, the Greens raised their tally from 1 to 4. But Labour has more than 200 new MPs who've been getting guided tours of their crumbling Victorian workplace.
The doorkeeper was telling me that you can fit 400 in the chamber at Squeeze. Well, there are 400 just on our side, so
How's that going to work? Did they have any ideas?
I think hang from the rooftops by the looks of things.
You all sound wonderfully unified, but it's a political party. There are going to be rebellions, there's going to be dissent.
I hope that we can make your life, and we will be making your life, a little bit more boring in the years to come.
Keir Starmer kind of said that, didn't he, on the doorstep? I promise you boredom.
He's got a great deal of personality and he's a very fun person to be around, but right now he's got a very serious job ahead of him, so if boring's what we get, I'll take that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The government intends to blast you with many more announcements before the summer break, each matched with a dossier of blame, pinning any future pain on the Tories, who in defeat, they hope, may struggle to fight back.
So, as we've just heard, the Chancellor promised to get Britain building again with a wave of planning reforms this morning. But how will it actually work? Our economics correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, has been to one so-called grey belt site to find out.
We have built more than 300,000 houses, new houses, in 1953.
Now, 71 years later, Labour wants to do the same as they hunt for economic growth.
Hello, and welcome to the Treasury.
The new Chancellor was hobnobbing with business leaders as she called for them to do their bit to usher in a new housing revolution. Successive governments have talked up house building, but in reality the numbers have never delivered. House building peaked 7 decades ago, and we've never reached those levels since. Last year completions sank to 189,000. More worrying, perhaps, is what's happened when it's come to planning applications, where project permissions have fallen to the lowest level on record, with just 2,500 approvals in the first 3 months of this year. So could this be the answer? They call it the Grey Belt. Nestled within protected green belt land, they have some sort of development before, like this field in Ockham, Surrey, where a World War II runway is mossed over and colonised by poppies and daisies. Housing consultants Knight Frank say there are 11,000 plots like this one across the country, ripe for Labour's planning revolution. But Frances Porter says she'll fight these changes tooth and nail.
I think we've got to think about ecology and the wildlife. All we're hearing now is the damage that we're doing. As I said, I've got children and I want to leave this world a better place than when we started.
But don't they need homes, your children?
Well, they need homes, but they wouldn't buy a house up here. They'll never be able to afford a house if it's built up here.
A lot of people might listen to this interview and go, oh, it's all right for Frances. She's got a beautiful home in a beautiful part of the country. She just doesn't want things to be built in her backyard. She is a NIMBY. Do you wear that with a badge of honour?
I think it is difficult, really. You know, when you just know it's the right thing, the location is wrong. It's not a sustainable site.
Labour are determined to build more homes. They're thinking about sites exactly like this in their review.
Yeah.
Are you going to still continue to fight?
I think you have to. I think we have to, because as you say about I've got children, they will want homes, but they want the homes in the right place. And even more important to them is nature.
Helia Ibrahimi, Channel 4 News. Good morning, Chancellor. Is today's announcement a declaration of war against NIMBYs?
It will still be, in the first instance, up to local communities and local authorities to decide where housing is built. But we will bring back those mandatory housing targets, so the answer cannot always be no. So it'll be up to local communities to decide where the housing is built, but it has to be built. If the answer is always no, we'll continue as we are. And continuing as we are means living standards continuing to decline, and it means public services continuing to deteriorate. I'm not willing to accept that status quo.
But one of the major hurdles for Labour will be getting private developers to build. If you want more social housing and more infrastructure, like roads, schools and sewers, then development profits will get squeezed.
I think the government has massively underestimated that cost. And I think that's where this policy could, unfortunately, fall down. I think it's very well intended. We absolutely welcome it. But viability of these sites will be a very serious challenge. And I fear that, in fact, rather than 11,000 sites coming forward from Grey Belt development, it could, in fact, be none.
In London, Westminster Council are doing the unthinkable, building council homes on their land. And what's even more rare is that 70% is for social rent.
We've got a generations-long lack of affordable housing here in Westminster. We've got families, multi-generations sharing the same bed in small accommodation, and we've got increasing numbers being made homeless because of spiralling rents in the private rented sector. So that's not right in 2024. We need, as a council, to be working with the government to make sure that we are building the homes that we need to tackle the housing crisis.
And it's not just houses. The government also wants a new generation of onshore wind farms, something that's provoked even more fury from local residents. But this is a Chancellor who, at this stage at least, seems happy to have a fight, as long as it delivers her more growth.
Well, joining me now is Peter Kyle, newly appointed as the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. And we'll come to your brief in a moment. But just on getting Britain building, how are you going to take the country with you? You know, you've got a lot of very slim majorities. You could annoy people very quickly, couldn't you?
Well, Krishnan, we have just won an election with a substantial majority, and we didn't hide what our intentions were when it came to building and getting Britain building again in the election. This is something we spoke about repeatedly all the way through it, and it was there written in our manifesto loud and clear. So actually this isn't just about selling this to the country. The country has just endorsed our manifesto and our approach to this. But we are going to do so with a resolution using the power and authority that comes with central government. But as you heard there, we will always give local areas, local authorities, the first chance to get this right. We see this as a partnership between different layers of government. We all have our role to play in this. Local areas must be in control of where housing and other infrastructure items are built. But there are some times that there are just local obstacles to get it done. In those circumstances, you will find an assertive central government as we step in to try and break down those barriers. Sometimes local authorities will be asking us to do so because they have too many barriers locally.
So you will sometimes override concerns. I mean, we also saw in Hellier's piece there the start of the building industry objecting to the sort of onerous requirements you're going to put on them to build social housing and saying, well, can't be done for and still make a profit. In the past, we've seen governments weaken the demands on developers. Do you promise you won't be doing that?
We have high expectations. Now, we are going to create and build 1.5 million new homes. What we're not going to do is have, some parts, not all parts, some parts of the developer community, for want of a better expression, coming to us and saying they want it better. Actually, we are talking about making sure we create the circumstances, breaking down the barriers to developers coming in and developing good quality homes right from the outset of this government. So they should be out there seizing the opportunities that we are creating, not out there saying we want more. Now, come to us when there are specific challenges, and we will try and be a partner to breaking down those challenges. But our country needs new homes, it needs new social homes, it needs new infrastructure, whether that be labs for science and life sciences, whether that means data centres for the digital infrastructure of the future. This is a government that will break down those barriers and make sure we can get our country fit for the future.
Well, let's come to your department. I know your earpiece is just coming out if you want to push it back in. Now, you said today that you're an economic department now in science and technology. Of course, the impact of Brexit has been very damaging for science in Britain, and we've only just got back into the Horizon scheme. How are you going to make up for that lost ground and turn science into an economic powerhouse?
Well, when you go back to those dark periods where the government landed us with a terrible Brexit deal and yanked us out of the Horizon programme, which meant that scientists in this country could collaborate and work incredibly productively with scientists elsewhere and institutions similarly. Of course, that has been returned to a degree now, but luckily, we have a very resilient, world-class scientific community here. We have the Crick Institute, we have a university sector that's very mature, and we have great partnerships between the private sector and public research institutions. What we're talking about now is building upon that, because we want to make sure that that is part of our economic development programme. So we've already announced a Regulatory Innovation Office, which I'll be getting off the ground in short order. That will expedite innovations through the regulatory landscape so we can get out there and benefit the health of the nation and economic growth quickly. We're going to review planning. We're going to make sure we have a regulation update as well, and we're going to make sure that we're building more labs and data centres going forward. So these are the things we can do straight away to really capture. And of course, we have announced in the last 24 hours that Patrick Vallance, the former Chief Scientific Officer, is coming into government as a science officer to make sure he can use his wisdom and experience to turbocharge and be the partner that the sector needs to get this sector really rocketing. We will become an economic department in DCIT.
Central to science is the universities.
Yes.
When will they get their settlement from government and know whether they can all survive?
Well, it's not just the economic settlement that is the issue. Now, the department I'm responsible for funds the research side of universities, and it's crucial funding. We want to make sure we can make better use of the existing funding out there. So we're moving from 1 to 3 year funding programs to 10-year R&D programs when it benefits the health of the nation, economic growth, or our priorities that we set out in an industrial strategy. That's not going to cost a penny to the Exchequer, but it will give certainty to those research institutions, and it will crowd in funding from the private sector, unlock more private sector investment into these sectors. These are the things we can do without spending, without borrowing, without taxing more. These are the lessons we have to learn, and it's why we will not be judged on the constraints and failures of the past 14 years, because there is another way forward. Having an assertive government that's out there unlocking potential, using all the tools it has, not just tax and spend, to make sure that we can get the investment into our economy and public services that we need so badly.